What is the most dangerous thing in the world? Debt? Poverty? Failure? Maybe none of them. Maybe the most dangerous thing in the world is the cheap dream people try to sell you. Because let's be honest, if $1 million suddenly appeared in your bank account right now, you'd probably stop watching this video. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you. Because we all grew up with the same story. More money, a bigger house, a better car, more freedom, and most importantly, a peaceful and happy life. The equation always seemed that simple. But here's what most people don't realize. Most people who want to be rich have absolutely no idea what being rich actually feels like. Because people usually show you the results. Very few people show you the price behind those results. And today, we're going to look at the hidden side of wealth. Because sometimes when a dream comes true, it stops being a dream. It becomes reality. And reality is usually a lot less filtered than Instagram. Will Bell 1. The dream of being rich. You're 24 years old. Just an ordinary day. You wake up in the morning. You check your phone. No message from your boss. No warning from your bank. No stress about making it to the end of the month. For the first time, the day belongs to you. And let's be honest, this is exactly how most people imagine being rich. Freedom. Because when people think about money, they don't immediately think about Lamborghinis or luxury mansions. They think about freedom of time, being able to wake up whenever you want, go wherever you want, not having to tolerate people you don't want to be around. In other words, financial freedom. And honestly, that sounds incredible, because it is. Think about it. Knowing you don't have to set an alarm tomorrow morning. Knowing Monday doesn't have power over you anymore. Knowing your heart won't start racing because you're late for a meeting. That alone is a luxury. But it doesn't stop there. Because money doesn't just buy time, it buys options. Not checking prices at a restaurant. Not calculating every expense before a vacation. Not being afraid of a lower paycheck when considering a new opportunity. For most people, these sound like small details. But in reality, life quality is often built on small details. And honestly, I think most people underestimate just how important those details are. Then comes status. Human nature is strange. Nobody likes saying it out loud, but we all enjoy status. A little recognition, a little more respect, a stronger reputation. That feeling of becoming someone. So yes, nobody wants a sports car purely for transportation, because let's be honest, driving a McLaren to buy milk might be one of the most expensive grocery runs in history. But the car isn't the point. What it represents is success, power, and perhaps most importantly, choice. The feeling that after years of hard work, you've actually built something meaningful. Maybe that's why millions of people get up every morning and go to work. Because inside their heads, there's an invisible movie playing. One day, everything will be better. One day, I won't feel this stressed anymore. One day, I'll finally live the life I want. And here's the interesting part. There's nothing wrong with that dream, because money really does solve a lot of problems. Pretending otherwise would be ridiculous. It pays the bills. It increases comfort. It creates opportunities. It makes life easier. But there's something else people often forget. Money doesn't change emotions. It doesn't bring people back. It doesn't fix every invisible problem. And this is where most people make a mistake. They see wealth as a finish line. As if the game ends once they get there. As if all their problems stay outside the door. As if they've finally defeated life's final boss. But life isn't a video game. Every new level unlocks new challenges. And that's exactly where the dream of being rich begins to separate from the reality of being rich. Because at the next level, the challenge is no longer making money. It's carrying everything that comes with it. Level 2. The reality of being rich. After a while, something interesting happens. You actually achieve parts of the life you've always dreamed about. A higher income, more options. Maybe you've reached the point where you can finally afford the cars you've wanted for years. And at first, it feels amazing. Because the thing you've been dreaming about for so long is finally real. But then a strange feature of the human mind reveals itself. It adapts, and it adapts fast. Things that once excited you slowly become normal. Your first luxury car, your first big house, your first serious investment, your first business class flight. At first, they're exciting. Then they become part of everyday life. Maybe that's why so many people don't stay happy forever after becoming wealthy. Because there's an invisible battle between happiness and adaptation. And adaptation usually wins. But that's not the most interesting part. The most interesting part is what comes with wealth. Things nobody talks about, like decisions. Think about it. How many major decisions do you actually have to make right now? Probably not that many, because your options are limited. But once your options grow, everything changes. Because options create freedom. But they also create pressure. Which investment should I make? Should I take this opportunity? Should I get involved in this project? Should I partner with this person? People often assume that as money increases, problems decrease, but sometimes the opposite happens. The problems don't disappear. They simply change levels. At one point, you're worried about making it through the month. At another point, you're making million-dollar decisions. Either way, they still take up space in your mind. And here's the interesting thing. People on the outside usually only see the results. Nobody looks at a large office building and thinks, I wonder what kind of responsibility comes with that. Because people see the reward, not the weight. And that's when wealth starts to feel different. Because now money isn't just giving you freedom, it's giving you responsibility, risk, expectations. And sometimes it even changes the way people look at you. Some people admire you. Some people envy you. Some people expect something from you. And one day you realize, your life may have become easier, but it hasn't become simpler, because from a distance everything looks perfect. But when you get closer, new questions begin to appear, and most of those answers can't be found in a bank account. Maybe that's why so many people dream of becoming rich, but far fewer manage to stay rich. Because at the next level, the challenge isn't owning something, it's not losing it. Level 3, the pressure of being rich. At some point, the rules of the game change. The goal is no longer making more money, it's protecting what you already have. And at first, that doesn't sound too bad. After all, most people would probably say, I wish I had millions to protect. And honestly, that's a fair point. But things feel different when you're actually living it. Because as wealth grows, the cost of mistakes grows with it. A bad decision that once cost you a few $100s can now cost hundreds of thousands. And your mind knows that. That's why many wealthy people don't necessarily become more relaxed. They become more careful, more cautious, more analytical, because now they have something to lose. Maybe that's what most people don't understand. Poverty creates stress, but wealth creates pressure, just in different ways. At some point, the number in your bank account gets bigger, but the silence inside your mind doesn't. Sometimes it does the exact opposite, because you're no longer thinking only about yourself. You may have employees, business partners, family members, people who trust you. And one day you realize that your decisions don't just affect your life anymore. They affect other people's lives too. That's where the pressure begins, because failure stops being a personal problem and becomes a responsibility. And responsibility is often heavier than money itself. People usually notice what wealthy people own, but very few people notice what they carry. Expectations, responsibilities, risks, and the constant need to make the right decision. From the outside, everything looks impressive. Luxury offices, tailored suits, high-level meetings, success stories. But there's another side people rarely see. The moments spent staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering, what if I made the wrong decision? Because one of the greatest ironies of wealth is this. People constantly tell you how successful you are, but almost nobody asks how much pressure you feel. And over time, something interesting happens. You stop wanting more money. You start wanting more certainty, more control, more security. But here's the funny thing about life. No matter how wealthy you become, you can never buy a guarantee for the future. That's why so many people believe wealth will finally bring them peace. But sometimes what they find isn't peace at all. It's bigger responsibilities, bigger expectations, bigger fears. And perhaps that's one of the heaviest prices of being rich. Feeling like you always have to appear strong. Because that's what people expect. They expect you to have all the answers, to always make the right decision, to always stay in control. But the truth is, you're just as human as everyone else. And maybe that's why so many people reach the top and begin asking a new question. The question is no longer, how do I make more money? The question becomes, is all of this actually worth it? And that's exactly where the quietest cost of wealth begins to appear. Because at the next level, the challenge is no longer money. It's people. Level 4. The isolation of being rich. At some point, something interesting happens. You achieve most of the things you've spent your life chasing. Money, success, status, freedom. The dreams you've carried for years are finally real. And from the outside, it looks like you've won. But this is where something appears that almost nobody talks about. Loneliness. Not the kind of loneliness people usually imagine. A different kind. The kind that exists in crowded rooms. Because wealth gives you many things, but it also changes the way people approach you. And after a while, strange questions begin to appear in your mind. Does this person actually like me? Or do they like what I have? Are they interested in me? Or are they interested in my lifestyle? At first, these questions seem harmless, but over time they grow. Because trust is not something money can buy. And no matter how successful a person becomes, they still need genuine human connections. Maybe that's why many wealthy people become more selective as time goes on. Their circle gets smaller. Trust becomes harder to give, because you start analyzing everyone's intentions. And honestly, that's exhausting. At some point, you stop wanting more money. You start wanting more peace, more sincerity, more meaning. Because life has a strange rule. Money can solve certain problems, but there are others it simply can't touch. And most people don't realize that until after they've built wealth. Maybe that's why so many successful people eventually start asking the same question. What was all of this for? Is this really the life I wanted? Because for years, you've been focused on goals, the next income level, the next investment, the next achievement, the next milestone. But one day, you look back, and for the first time, you stop evaluating your goals and start evaluating your life. That's where the final price of being rich begins to reveal itself. Because now the conversation is no longer about money, it's about meaning. What you'll leave behind, how people will remember you, and perhaps most importantly, who you would have been without all of it. And here's the interesting thing. At the beginning of this video, many of us believed that becoming rich would solve every problem. But by the end of the journey, we discover something different. Money can make life easier. It can create comfort. It can provide freedom. But it cannot help you escape yourself. Because at the end of the day, whether you're poor or rich, whether you have millions or nothing at all, you still have to live with the same person, yourself. And perhaps that's the greatest price of being rich. Realizing that the thing you've been chasing your entire life may not have been the thing you were truly looking for.